Welcome.
Hi.
This is the Nail Ladies Show.
What's
Yes,
that?
it is. What is the Nail
What's
Ladies Show?
that?
Maybe we should start there. First of all, this is our first time doing this, so mind the homemade feeling that this might be giving you.
Well, we're business owners, and we get together every month to collaborate on what it means to run a business. And we thought it would be really fun to talk on camera about some of the things that we get asked a lot.
Yeah, we get asked a lot of the same questions over and over, and I think this is true for most business owners. So we thought, why don't we sit down, have a chat, get some mugs that say the Nail Ladies
It's
Show.
kind of like our coffee date with the living room.
It is, and much cozier without all the people walking around us.
Would you explain to the audience why we call ourselves the Nail Ladies?
So it's actually a new thing that we're calling ourselves the Nail Ladies. This is not like we don't go around like a band, like a girl band, calling ourselves
no one
that.
wants to hear me sing.
But we call ourselves the Nail Ladies because we both own businesses that have to do with nails, although they are very different. My business is called the Nail Saloon. We are a luxury nail salon and cocktail parlor here in the District of Columbia, DMV, we call it, for those of you not in the area, DC, Maryland, and Virginia. And Gina.
Yeah, I own a bunch of hardware stores, so I sell nails. I also get my nails done at Andrea's Nail Saloons.
And I
Thank
buy
goodness.
my nails at her shops, her multiple shops. You have what, 13?
13, yes.
So why don't we start, Gina, telling us how you, lovely self, got started in this business?
I started in 2003. I opened my first hardware store in Logan Circle here in Washington, D.C., because Logan Circle desperately needed everything. It was a neighborhood that had been destroyed by the riots in the 60s. And fast forward to the early 90s, essentially, people started moving east in D.C. to find a cheaper place to live. And I was one of those people. I wanted to own a house or a condo before I got married. I could see the writing on the wall. And I lost my job. I got laid off. I was in the tech industry. It was my third layoff in 3 years. I came home from work one day and I said, that's it. I'm not doing it anymore. I didn't want to commute. I didn't like driving to an office far away. I didn't want to work for a man, which has nothing to do with men, but my boss at the time was a dude, and I held everything against him. And I knew the neighborhood wanted a hardware store.
And why hardware?
I started a hardware store because it's practical. It was the absolute opposite of the software company that I was working for. It felt very community-based, and I love everything community. There was a really strong community association in Logan Circle at the time, and we would go to the meetings. We got very involved, my husband and I, and people would say they wanted a grocery store, a hardware store, and a pharmacy. Although the order was usually grocery store, pharmacy, hardware store. Food, then drugs, then nails, apparently.
Not those kind of drugs.
Yeah, not those kind of drugs. And I didn't have to open the grocery store or the pharmacy because the Fresh Fields and a CVS opened up. And so in 2003, 2003, 14th Street, I decided that a hardware store was it for me.
And 14th Street, for those of you who don't remember or who are not from the area, that used to be kind of like the red light district of DC at that time. It was kind of a shady place to be.
It was very shady. People didn't want to walk their dogs there. The streets were littered with trash. I actually remember blocks that were entirely boarded up. Not one building that was unboarded. And the beauty of moving to this neighborhood was that it was inexpensive. And so if you were young and didn't have a lot of money or were continuously getting laid off from your job, you could afford it. And there were enough people doing that the boards were coming off the walls. And it was feeling like it could be a hip place to live.
So fast forward to 2014. That was the year that I opened in Logan Circle when the neighborhood was quite the hippest part of town. 14th and P, actually, the intersection, which is where we opened our first nail saloon, was called, the hottest intersection in town because it had so many things in walking distance and close proximity. And that's where we found our first spot. And it's funny because I had been living in Seattle, working a very corporate job as a speechwriter, and I was desperate to get out of corporate America, and I just didn't know how I would get out. And my origin story was that I was getting a manicure at a sort of a corner nail salon, the typical salon that you go to that is in any strip mall across the USA. And I remember talking on the phone to my then business partner here in DC thinking, goodness, this experience that I'm having right now could be perfected. Even it was dirty. People were, there were TVs everywhere. People were, the smell and the tools. I was like, am I going to get some sort of disease from these tools? And I just thought I shouldn't be worried about like tetanus or some fungal infection. And
there's the soundbite.
Yeah. Tetanus, not served at the nail salon. And so I thought, okay, this could be perfected. And my friend and I were talking, and I was like, no, for real, this could actually be wonderful. We could serve drinks and, obviously not just alcoholic drinks, but coffees and teas and delicious juices and spritzers. And we could sell really high-end services, but in a way that's accessible, that doesn't make people have to go to a, hotel spa to get. And I thought, this could work. And the next day I quit my job. The next day I quit my job and moved back to DC within 3 weeks of that, and still had my gel manicure on when I moved back. I literally returned to DC like, okay, because I had, grown up around here. And I thought, okay, this is, hey, Google, how do you open a nail salon?
Let's go.
That's kind of how we started.
Obviously, you weren't afraid to do something wildly different from corporate America.
It's funny. I think one of the things that I would tell people the most about opening a business, because a lot of people say to me, and I'm sure they say to you, I always wanted to have a bed and breakfast, and I've always wanted to do. I'm just not brave enough.
Just do it. With my hammer.
With a hammer.
Just do it.
I kind of need a hammer too. Maybe I can get a file from your hardware store.
You a prop.
I'd like a prop. I'd like a gavel of sorts.
I love this gavel.
But it's true. People are afraid to do it, and it makes sense that they would be afraid to do it. It's a huge risk. But
yes.
I think what people fail to see, and that goes back to your story, people fail to see that there's risk in everything. If you work for a big corporation, you can get laid off like you were in the a whole industry can kind of collapse like the .com bust. So I think that people think that where they are is fail proof. Business is not fail proof, but nothing is really fail proof, right?
Nothing is.
I mean, I feel very fortunate that my business has worked, and I think there are several factors that I attributed to it working. But it could have failed. It still can, it still can.
One of my favorite quotes is, you have to earn luck, because people have said, oh, you're lucky. You've grown this big business and you have 13 locations and, millions of dollars in revenue, yada, yada, yada. But you have to earn luck. And that means showing up every day and doing some really hard things and making a lot of decisions. And it's like, how when I'm not a mom, but how you say your mom's name over and over again when you're a kid, like mom, mom, mom. And you don't want to hear your name anymore. I remember starting the hardware store, and every single employee and customer, it was Gina. And I'm like, I don't know what the answer is. Stop asking me. But I signed up to be that person. I signed up to be asked all the questions, and I was going to figure it out. I mean, we sell 25,000 items. The odds of me knowing what a fraction of them are or do or are called, even to this day, I mean, it's a challenge. So there are no easy businesses, I don't think. They're so much fun, though. And I think there's a lot of similarities between what you and I have done.
Yeah. What do you think has been the sort of biggest challenge that you had in getting open?
Well, so first of all, in getting open, probably funding. It's very hard for a woman in particular to get funding for a business.
That statistic is like mind blowing.
Yeah,
just the access to capital. It's like
less than 4%.
It's like 3%.
Yeah, it's very small. I got an SBA loan, which was much easier today, I think, than it was then. But you still have to have collateral. I owned a condo. I had gotten married by this point, and so my husband and I owned a house. I had a tenant in my condo, and he asked me one day what the worst thing would be. What could happen if I failed? Like, what's the worst thing? And I said, they'll take my house, my car. I said, my dog. And he said, oh my God, they'll take your dog. He was apoplectic. I didn't want to tell him they would also take the condo that he lived in, because I had to use it as I was required basically to over collateralize. And so having the guts every morning to wake up and not be afraid, I mean, that could scare the hell out of somebody, right? They're going to take everything that you own.
Yeah. You can't think about it too much, right?
You can't think about it. What you have to think about is the team that you're building, the revenue that you're growing, the customers that you're serving. I mean, if you're doing the right things and the community where you are needs you, wherever that might be, I really believe that good things will happen and you can be a success.
Yeah, I think also like eyes on it, right? Eyes on it. A lot of people say to me, "Oh, your business runs itself," and I'm like,
No.
what business in the world runs? What? That is
None.
not a thing. There's no such thing as somebody's running a business, and it
Right.
might not be you directly, but
Right.
the business is not. And I think keeping an eye on every single aspect of your business or having a really good team in place that helps you keep an eye on things is how you can pivot, right? And I used to always say in the beginning, okay, if it doesn't work, we'll turn it into a tire shop. If that doesn't work, we'll turn it into a taco stand. If that doesn't work, I'll be like outside. Those like, those like
the windsock things.
Yeah. I was like, I'll go out there and spin a pencil. I don't care. Seriously, you
Spin a pencil.
you really have to I think have the grit and the determination to just. It's like there's no room for failure. You have to make it work while also realizing that you could fail. So how do you mitigate for that, right? And how do you, work in a way that has the eyes on the prize and knows that a lot of people are now depending on you once you have employees.
Yeah.
And what does that look like if they're now supporting their families thanks to the business that you've built?
There's first of all, there's a million ways I could answer this. But one of the things that you and I have talked about is the fact that the skills that we learn running any business will allow us to run any business.
Yeah.
So you touched on it. You are really good with people. You know how to take care of your team. You know how to respect them. You trust them. Mm-hmm. Those are things that you have to do if you're running, what did you say, a tire shop or a hardware store or a daycare center. I mean, no matter an insurance agency. I gave a speech recently to some folks. There were folks from BMW in the audience, and I said I could run an auto manufacturing facility, which of course seems crazy for me to suggest. However, they need people. They have departments that run HR. They have departments that do marketing. They have departments that deal with finance. All of the things that you're doing at the nail salon. Yeah. And if we think about the skills that we already have in the jobs that we're in, we can imagine them anywhere else. Yeah. I believe that. I think that
there is definitely like a shared vocabulary. And I think the businesses that succeed, they also have a shared philosophy. And maybe the philosophy varies in the specifics of a certain values. But I do think that being an intentional business is really important to success. I don't think you can just kind of put things together and expect them to just blow up. And there's really no overnight success in business. People talk about that. I think I think people have a lot of misconceptions about what it takes, and it just takes a lot of work. I mean, it feels, you have how many hardware stores now? 13. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of it's a hardware conglomerate in this area, really, and it seems very glamorous with your gold hammer, but the truth is that it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of mundane and sometimes not glamorous and not exciting work, and a lot behind the scenes. And I always think, I remember one time driving down a main street here in DC and just passing a bunch of stores, and I kept thinking, the amount of decisions that are surrounding me right now. There were so many. Everything was a decision. Yeah. And, you don't think about that when you're like sitting at a restaurant. You're just like grabbing the napkin. You don't realize that napkin.
Somebody decided.
Somebody sourced. Somebody, compared. Somebody got a sample. Somebody didn't receive the shipment. Ordered, received, washed. It's like decided where to store it. I mean, every single thing is a decision.
Yeah.
And it can be overwhelming, but yeah, it's rewarding. But I do think that being intentional about what it is that you're building, I think helps people succeed.
So what are some of the other questions you get asked a lot?
I get asked a lot about funding. I think people want to know. I think they're curious about what it takes to open up a business. And I think people don't realize that it is very expensive, right? And you, in your case, you got an SBA loan. I did not get a loan. I had a business partner, so we went in 50-50. But that meant that I had to put in a few $100,000 into this business, which I didn't just have laying around, right? So it took all the traditional things you hear about: cashing out a 401k, selling a condo, taking on I always joke, 17 jobs. Like I was a full-time TV producer. I was freelance speech writing still. I was, people would call and they're like, do you need a translator? Do you know a translator that you can that I could hire for something? Like, I'll translate it, but you don't speak Hungarian. I'm like, I'll figure it out.
I can do it by tomorrow.
I sold my car. I always tell the story that, I love cars, and I used to have a very nice car that I sold, and instead but I still needed a car to just get around. And I ended up buying the cheapest car that I could find out in the market. The bumper on my car was being held up by zip ties. True story, zip ties. And I used to like love cars, and all of a sudden I'm driving a car that was so run down.
Did I sell you those zip ties?
Probably.
I love it.
Probably.
Thank you for your business.
They thank you for the zip ties. But I would have sold a friend if I could at the kidney. Does anybody want a kidney? Because I didn't have the cash, so it just took. We had about a year to build out, and we'd get a bill for $35,000, and I'd have to put in half, and my business partner would have to put in half, and I'd have what do I have that I can sell? And I blew out every credit card. I always tell the story of I had a flood in my condo, and I insurance was going to cover the cost of replacing the floors, but I still had to go buy the floors, and then they would reimburse me. And I remember being at the floor store like, okay, it wasn't that big of a space. And I was like, okay, put 200 on this card, put try 250 on this one. Like, do you accept a grocery store card? Like it was so scrappy in the beginning, and that's the reality of it. I mean, you just have to find. I mean, people do friends and family and friends raises, and there's ways to get capital that way. But we went in with cash and really betting on everything, because the day we opened, I remember thinking, okay, I literally have no money, and I always joke that I had $3 to my name, and of course I had a little bit more than $3, but not that much more.
$3.50.
Really, seriously, and I thought, if this thing doesn't work, I do not know how I'm going to do this. Like, I don't know how, So we had to make it work, which is why I said, you know what, if it needs to become a taco stand it will be. Like, there was no option to fail. And I think that's, in a way, it gives you a little bit more control even than corporate America, right? Because you can pivot a lot faster than the company you work for can. And maybe the company you work for, when people say to me, I'm just not brave enough to open up a business. And I'm like, the risk of business is high, but the risk of other things is high too. And at least when you own a business, you can turn the nail salon into a taco stand. I feel like that quote could go viral and tank us. We're not becoming a taco stand.
I do love tacos.
I mean, though. Maybe we should.
No, I think, and so what this makes me think of actually is a question that I get a lot. How did you do it? What's your biggest piece of advice? And that's hard because there's a ridiculous amount of advice. But I was super curious, and I would pester our vendors to help me. What does this nail do? What does this bolt do? Why in the heck do I need this? Why do I need this kind of hammer versus this kind of hammer on the shelves? And if I had been afraid to ask questions, there are so many things that I wouldn't have been able to do, or I would have never gotten to the point of not just product wise, but how do I interview people? What are the legalities with hiring people? What can I ask in an interview? I remember I sort of accidentally hired a 14-year-old. So one of the other questions that I get asked a lot, so I'll ask you, is what were some of your biggest, like your top 3 biggest challenges to getting open?
My goodness. I think the first one is just the opening, just doing it.
Opening the doors.
I know. No, for real. I think analysis paralysis is a real thing in business. Like you could always wait to open. You're never going to be ready. So you're going to have to start before you're ready. Right? I always say to people, you're not going to have all the answers, and you're going to try to mitigate, right? And do as much as you can to be ready, but you just will not be 100% ready.
You can't.
And you're just going to have to open and troubleshoot as you go. So I think that is definitely a very big challenge of just not being stuck in the weeds and saying, I don't have this yet. I don't have this yet. No, you're not going to have a lot of things yet. And you're going to have a lot of things that you're then going to have to change. So I think that is a huge challenge to opening up a business. I think funding is obviously difficult and a challenge for everybody. And I think the third thing is really defining what it is you want to do and where the limits are of where you won't bend. I think you have to be flexible in business, but I think we were told in many instances, oh, that's not going to work because of this, or that's not going to work because of that. And at some point, you have to be accountable to the decisions you're making and trust your own instinct, which is hard to do when you have so many people who are smarter than you, wiser than you, have been in business longer than you.
More.
Saying to you, that's not going to work. I think you have to live and die by your own sword in many ways. And it's the ultimate accountability game, right?
Yeah.
So I would say those are some of mine. I'm curious, what were some of yours?
Finding the location for us was a big deal. Yeah. I have a fierce passion for urban neighborhoods, and we have some suburban locations now, but my heart is in the middle of the city. Well, the middle of the city doesn't necessarily have the perfectly square 8,000 to 10,000 square foot box that I need for a hardware store. And so finding locations was a challenge, but then we also rose to it by taking really unique locations. So the first store had 3 levels with no elevator. It didn't have any parking. The second store was the second store was almost perfect in the square box setting, anyway, it had its challenges. The third location was in a basement. It has zero natural light. You can't see it from the road. We really put ourselves into some interesting spots. And so that was probably the biggest, is figuring out how to have enough space in an urban area for us to be successful. And then the funding was a big deal. And then figuring out how to market. So I don't know about you, but I don't have a budget to put myself on TV. I don't have a budget to run big newspaper ads. Fortunately, when we opened, it was a novelty to be a chick that owns a hardware store.
I feel like it's still a novelty to be a chick that owns a hardware store.
I'm working on making it
I own a nail salon. It feels more on brand, but you're definitely still a novelty gal.
I am working on making it not a novelty. I have some really cool peers across the country. Yes, women who own some fantastic hardware stores or co-own hardware stores with their spouses like I do. Mark did eventually quit his job and join me, so truly it's been a partnership with my husband. But I used that to my advantage. If the Washington Post called, or if Entrepreneur Magazine called, or whoever was available at the time called and said, we want to interview the lady that owns the hardware store, I showed up. I mean, I might have been in overalls and boots. I was never cute. But I showed up for those interviews. Yeah. And I took advantage of all of the free press I could get, which I think today young entrepreneurs have the ability to really use social media. Yeah. And I sort of feel like you and I are just on the cusp of figuring out how to use it, because it wasn't really a thing when we were starting out. None of it
Instagram
existed.
Didn't even exist.
No,
I don't think
Instagram didn't. No. So I think we are in a much better spot now to be able to figure out how to make videos work for us.
And word of mouth, I heard somebody say something really, really interesting not too long ago at a conference, and they said, I don't tell my friends about your brand because I like your brand. I tell my friends about your brand because I like my friends. And I think that's right. I think that's a really good way to look at things. I mean, it's true. We are driven to communicate with the people in our lives about the things that matter to us. And I think people have associations to brands and to concepts, and love to tell their friends about something cool that they've experienced because they want their friends and their loved ones to experience it too. Yeah. And I think for us, same thing. We opened the nail salon. I remember being like, we can't even order more polish right now because we literally have no money to put in this. I mean, all the credit cards are blown. We were like, we have to start making money to be able to buy more things. And we thought, hopefully people will tell their friends about us once they come and they're treated well. And this feels like a different experience, and it doesn't smell in here, and it's clean, and everything's single use. And they'll tell people because they enjoyed what they've experienced. And I think same for us. And I mean, I would talk to anybody that wanted to about the nail salon. I still do. And the community just kind of built in that way. And people just started taking to us, and our clients are loyal, and we call them the familia. I'm from Brazil.
I love it.
I'm from Brazil. As a member of our familia, we we've tried to personalize it, right? Yeah. And make the experience such that people they have access to everybody in our leadership team. They can talk to us at any time. And we're there to just help them have a good experience still to this day.
This is how I know how wonderful you are. I can show up with my nails looking like this because I had
Tell me more about how wonderful I am,
and no one will make fun of me.
No, we are not. My nails don't look so hot right now either. Funnily enough, I used to do my nails a lot more before I owned the nail salon, which I feel like is an error in a spreadsheet somewhere.
I have a terrible toolbox. I mean, it's like the cobbler shoes.
You really don't have a good toolbox at your house?
No, I never have the tool that I need. I should be embarrassed, but it's just funny at this point that something will need to be fixed. And Mark and
what does a handyman or handywoman do when they come to your home?
They bring their own tools.
But are they intimidated by the fact that you're the queen of is?
No, but I do tell them they have to shop at the store if they're going to fix something in my house.
Well done.
If they're going to replace a light switch or whatever. They have to please come buy it from us.
Yes, I'd like to see the receipts.
Support
I don't do that. My friends will see me and they'll be like, and I'm like, they're like, I'm sorry, I didn't go to the nail salon, because I'm like, listen, I sometimes don't go to the nail salon, which is my least favorite thing to do. But I'm very fortunate to say that sometimes I can't get into my own salon.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Because, sometimes we're booked and I can't just be like, can you get up? Because I want to get my nails done.
So I can get a free.
I sometimes need my nails done for something, and I'll go somewhere else, and I call it market research.
Oh, I think that's fantastic.
And I get to see what other people are doing.
Yeah. Well, it's good. I have said on several occasions, we can often get stuck in our four walls, and for you and I, it's literally brick and mortar, right? Yeah. So I love the fact that I'm in a brick and mortar business. But if we don't leave the brick and mortar to see what's going on in other industries or other, and this also goes back to the fact that you and I technically run the same business. When I'm in the nail salon, I am paying attention to customer service. I'm thinking about like the cute little, the quippy little posters you have on the wall. Like keep
My
your
speech writing has come in.
Keep your cell phone comments to yourself. Like, no, but I mean, I'm thinking about those things and how they relate to my business. And is there something that we can do that would make us better for our community?
Absolutely.
Everywhere is
and
market
everybody,
research.
I always say, you know, I feel like we sometimes get imitated by some of our friends who are in the same business, and I am flattered. And that just means that I have to create new things because I maybe am taking inspiration from and imitating other people and other things that I see out in the world and when I'm traveling. And, you know, we have a rule in our corporate team that anytime it's not a rule because I can't enforce it like that, but we ask that anytime you're in a different city, the nail salon pays for a manicure, a mani-pedi anywhere you are, so that you can just experience something new and just see what's going on and be inspired or learn how we should do things differently or learn the things that we're actually doing well. And we, you know, I think inspiration is everywhere. And sometimes you see something and you're like, I see what they're doing here, but what we should do differently is this other thing. And I do think that there's like I said, room to grow always, and learn. We're gonna do a round of rapid fire now to close this out because we could talk forever. We usually do.
We will have to bring you along on our next coffee date.
Yes.
I have a couple of questions for rapid fire, and you literally get like one sentence.
One word. This will be my biggest challenge of the month.
One word might not work, but one sentence.
One sentence.
Okay,
I'm ready.
Worst advice you got your first year?
It'll never work. Don't do it.
Ugh. Best advice you got your first year?
Take care of your people.
How long before you got your first paycheck?
First paycheck ever. 6 months in, I cut myself a little bit of a mini salary.
Nice. How did you market or advertise?
We had a couple of bloggers come in. Blogs were the thing back in the day. Bloggers were the thing back in the day. They came in and we invited them to free services, and and it was kind of implied that they would write about us.
Okay, awesome. What do you wish someone had told you before day one?
It's going to be harder than you think and more rewarding than you imagine.
Oh, I love that.
It's true.
This is biggest regret. I'm not sure. Go ahead. Do you have any regrets?
I feel like that's another show. I don't
like this question.
No, there's the lessons. Either you win or you learn, right?
Oh, yeah, that's good.
I'm just coming.
Okay. How did you hire your first employee?
Intern I used to work in a news station, and she was an intern, and her internship was ending, and I said, "Do you want to work at a nail salon?"
Nice. And she said yes?
She said yes.
Would you like to ask me the question?
I would like to ask you the question. I don't have my glasses on, so good luck to me.
Okay.
Worst advice you got your first year?
Oh, this is easy. So my first year, I had a retailer tell me to shut my cash registers off shut them off at 5 o'clock every night. And I said, why? And he said, so that you don't have to pay taxes between 5 and 7. Yeah, you should make that base because it's illegal. I did not take his advice, obviously. And, maybe we'll get to an episode where we talk about exit strategies. Not listening to that advice really, really came to roost.
Yeah, paid off.
When we wanted to sell our business.
Yeah, there's some shadiness that people sometimes like to engage in, and that's never good business.
Never.
How long before you got your first paycheck?
How long before? I know I didn't take a day off.
Yeah, no, that's
I didn't take one day off for like 3.5 months. I'm guessing it was 4 or 5 months before I got a paycheck.
Yeah, but not like, I imagine it wasn't like a full mega paycheck.
No, it was very tiny. Like I probably took $50 from the cash register, to be honest. Yeah.
After 5. Just kidding.
Good one.
How did you market in the beginning, in the first year?
A ton of word of mouth. We opened in Logan Circle. So the community association meetings, like I mentioned previously, were huge. And I would take flyers and talk to everybody, all my neighbors, and word spread fairly quickly.
I love it. What do you wish somebody had told you before day one?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I would have listened. I don't know if I would have understood. So I really can't answer that question.
Maybe they didn't even tell you and you didn't.
Yeah, I mean, everything is just so overwhelming at the time.
Yeah, you have to be sort of one-track mind.
I tell people now to have fun, but I was having fun. So I think
that's good advice.
Yeah,
that's what I wish somebody would have.
Make it fun.
Yeah. Yeah, having fun along the journey is a big value of us on the back end of the business for sure. Um, and let's see, how did you hire your first employee?
So, my first employee was attending the Whitman Walker Drug Addiction Services program down the street and came in and said, I am getting clean from a crystal meth addiction. Will you give me a job?
I love that.
And I eventually said yes, which is a topic for a whole other conversation.
Oh, we will talk about this again because Gina has a very interesting story about why sometimes hiring former drug dealers is good business.
Yes.
Yeah, and we will just leave you with that. Actually, biggest regret, anything?
No regrets. I have zero regrets. None.
Love it. I love it. That's a good place to end, my friend.
We hope you send us some comments. And most importantly, we hope you send us questions so that we can have our next coffee chat and answer questions that you think are important as you start your own business.
Thanks for being with us.